Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Feldman from the English Literature faculty at Ilan. I'm here to tell you a little bit about the proposal process for writing your MA thesis proposal towards candidacy and earning your Tawar Sheni. Whether you're in literature studies, creative writing, or literary translation, it's the same process. In this video, we'll talk about that process. We'll talk about what is in your proposal document, and we'll talk about resources that can help you in writing this proposal. Now, what is a proposal? Before we get into the specifics of the document, let's talk about why we're doing this and what the process is all about. A proposal is an academic genre of a document. It's a little different than anything you've written before, most likely. And even if you've written a big chunk of your thesis, you're writing about a project, whether it be academic research or creative or lit or literary translation, that you want to undertake. And the proposal will be read by an academic committee of professors from across the university who will then judge whether this project merits possible candidacy for an advanced degree or not. Almost all of you will go through the process, if you're already watching this, hand in hand with your advisor and with the proposal coordinator, that's me, Dr. Feldman, and we're going to get you through this process without too much stress. But that's the general shape of what we're doing here. We're writing a document that will say what you wish to do for it to be judged by an academic committee and then send you on your way to actually writing your thesis. The process. At the end of your first year, start of your second year, no later than the first semester of your second year, at the very latest, but we want to do it as early as possible in order to give you that full second year of your MA in order to write the thesis. You will define a specific topic that you want to address, either as your creative writing thesis, your translation project, or your academic project for literary studies. And then commit yourself to a process of thinking and describing and researching that topic in a document that will be all of only 10 pages. Now, this genre of a thesis proposal is defined by and determined by the university. Yes, we are faculty members who work for the university, but we are actually not the ideal or the final audience for this document. Rather, you're writing this for an academic committee in the graduate school. They're the ones who will read it. We are going to help you get it ready for those readers. So first, you'll choose your topic. You'll do some research and thinking about it. You'll begin drafting this proposal. It will go through a series of drafts with me as the proposal coordinator, and then ultimately with your thesis advisor, your mentor. We will then submit it to the graduate school for them to have it reviewed by the MA committee, the Tawar Sheni committee. And 99% of the time for our students, you'll get a letter saying, yes, your proposal has been approved and you may now continue to undertake your thesis writing and be on your way towards eventually earning your MA degree. So that's the process. Choose a topic, begin drafting it with research and exploration of what your project will entail. We're going to hammer it into the specific form that the graduate school demands. We'll have the final draft approved by me and your thesis mentor, your advisor, and then it will be submitted for it to be reviewed and then almost always approved. That's the process. All of it can move relatively quickly. The MA committee meets rather regularly, or it can be as drawn out as you wish. We like to find a happy medium. We don't want this to be too rushed. We want you to have time to really think about what the project, what your thesis is going to look like. We don't want you to be too, we certainly don't want you to be stressed by an imminent deadline. And we also want to get this out of the way. It's really an academic exercise. This genre is an academic genre. The whole process is something that any graduate school will demand. And we want to give you enough time to really sink yourself and immerse yourself in your thesis project, the actual writing of the long thesis that you've come to Bar Ilan to write. Let's now talk about not the process, but the product. What is this document? The document of a proposal has to have this tone of what you will do. It is primarily an academic project, so no matter how creative you are in your poetry, in your fiction writing, your translation, or your academic project, it has to take a specific form and a specific tone of what the thesis will do in the future, even if you've written a lot of it, and it has to adhere to academic university standards. This might be stressful for those of you who've not written much of an academic sort. That's not a bad thing. It's a good exercise. However, this form, with its specific components, is defined and determined by our university. What does it entail? It has to have a specific length, 10 pages of text, plus any bibliography. You can make it a little shorter, 9 pages. You cannot make it longer. It has to be in a very specific cover page, which you can see, and these details are, we're in Israel, we're at Bar Ilan, these things have to be done to the letter, exactly as formatted and demanded by university. We're writing all our proposals in our department in English. Nonetheless, the elements of it, its components, its different parts, are the same as they would be in Hebrew. They can include this cover page, table of contents, the table of contents which lists these following parts. First part is optional, an introduction. Introduction is where you can, if you wish, choose to be personal. This is why I'm writing this novel. This is why I'm undertaking this study of Margaret Atwood. This is why I'm doing this literary translation. It doesn't have to be personal, but the introduction is optional. The next part is probably the most important and widely read one. The aims and general description. Here is what you say what the project is. This thesis will be a 100-page novel about this topic. This research project will analyze the feminist constructions of home in early romantic poetry. This will be a translation into English of the following collection of short stories by Dan Safidan. You say what it is that you are doing in 1 or 2 very short paragraphs. This section has to be less than 1 page. It is pretty dry. You are just saying, as if you were telling a stranger, because you are telling a stranger. You're telling these strangers, these professors who are on the academic MA committee in the graduate school, what it is that you're doing. That's all that you need to do in the general description, in the aims and general description. The next part is probably the most important, the conceptual background. What is it about this project that makes it worthwhile? How did you come to conceive of this cycle of short stories? Who are your literary influences in your poetry or your fiction? What is the academic and critical secondary literature that is relevant to your work in academic literary analysis or in literary translation? You must cite sources in the conceptual background. That means giving specific titles and works and books, and if you can, even citing, quoting from them. Here you can get in depth over the course of several pages, 3-4 pages, in an academic tone about why your project should be included in a university's curriculum, in its larger mission, its social mission of research, knowledge, creativity. After that, what we call the shape of the project. We're not really interested in methodology. You can write in the conceptual background a little bit about your methodology of translation. Methodology is more for science. We call this next section shape of the project. What will it be? You can give a chapter outline. You can give the outline of your novel, of your stories, of your poetry, how the different sections of poems will fit in, the translation, what the scope is. If you're translating a very long text, which part of it are you undertaking in your translation? Shape of the project says, what will the thesis look like when it's finished, approximately 1 year from now? Other elements can go into it. The only one that is mandatory, however, is the bibliography. The only additional one that I'll say is a bibliography. You have to cite text. These better be at least 4 or 5. They cannot be 1 or 2. It doesn't need to be 100. It doesn't even need to be 20. But you have to give a sense that you've done some reading, and your work, your what is research, but it could also be creative research if you're in the CW or LT program, how your thesis fits in to a larger body of making of books, of reading, of writing, and literary research. That's the process now, the resources. So there are successful thesis proposals on our website. I'll link to it, and I'll make sure you guys have copies of it. You can look at successful proposals for the last year, 2 years, 5 years, by professor, by field, whether it's literature studies, fiction, poetry, or translation. Use those as your guides. You also can certainly use me as a resource. As soon as you're ready to start writing, get in touch with me about any questions you have. As soon as you have a draft, let's go over it. Once you have a final draft, and this can take multiple backs and forth, that's not a problem. We can go through as many drafts as you need. Some people do 10 drafts, some people do 3. Almost no one does just 1 or 2, but you can. You might be the person who writes it perfect the first time out. It'll save yourself time. We then we then share it with your eventual thesis advisor, your mentor. If everything looks good, we'll then sign off it. There is some paperwork that goes along with your proposal, and we will submit 3 different documents: my outside review, my approval, a cover sheet that includes your signature, approval of your mentor, your advisor, and the thesis proposal itself, the proposal. These 3 elements will all be sent together to our MA coordinator, our graduate studies coordinator, or the registrar in our departmental office, Chelsea. All 3 documents should come together. We don't want to bombard her. We want to give her a package of these 3 elements that Chelsea will then share with the graduate school. Once it's done, it's out of your hands. You really don't have to worry about it much. The graduate school will review it. It'll get on their agenda. The MA committee will read it at some point, and assuming that all goes well, you will get a letter from the graduate school saying you've been approved, your proposal has been approved, and you can now continue into the more important part of your project, the actual writing of the thesis. Very often, the MA proposal, this document that we're talking about now, will serve as the skeleton, the foundation for what will become your introduction to your thesis. You can use these 10 pages over again, however much of it is helpful to you. So think about it also in that way. Not just what do you want to do your project about, most of you already have a good idea of that, but how do I start describing this? What kind of resources, what kind of reading list, what kind of influences and literary predecessors do I want to talk about in situating my project? You will all have to write an introduction to your thesis, no matter whether you're writing an avant-garde novella or if you're doing traditional analysis of text. There has to be an introduction to that work. The proposal can serve that purpose if it goes well, and it'll save you time down the road. But let's not even think about that all that much at this time. We just want to get this obstacle, this hurdle done. Hopefully it'll be interesting. Hopefully it'll be productive and beneficial to you in the long run. But right now, our job is to undertake this exercise, write this new genre of proposal writing, get through the academic certification process that comes from the graduate school at Ilan, and do it in a way that is calm, efficient, and hopefully even enlightening. Okay, so I'm Dr. Daniel Feldman, and I look forward to working with you as we get your thesis proposals approved, submitted, and get you on your way to writing your actual thesis. Thanks.